What if the greatest fear in the world of One Piece was never the world government, the Yonko, or even the ancient weapons, but a forgotten god hidden behind myths no one dared to mention? Chapter 1182 completely changes the scale of the story. The moment Zaza appears, the conflict in Elbaf stops feeling like a normal war and starts becoming something far more terrifying. Rain itself turns into a weapon, imagination becomes reality, and the balance between myth and truth begins to collapse in front of everyone's eyes. At the same time, IMU finally starts revealing powers that feel almost divine, while Roronoa Zoro, Sanji, and Loki struggle to survive in a battlefield that no longer follows normal rules. This is no longer just about pirates fighting for victory. The story is slowly entering an era where gods, fear, and ancient legends are becoming real, and Elbaf may be the very place where the hidden truth of the world finally begins to break apart. Oh yeah, so we can keep interacting and making the anime storytelling world even more fun together. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments to keep the vibe going. Alright guys, let's jump straight into the discussion. Let's go. Imagine the world of One Piece suddenly starting to acknowledge something that had only existed as a myth for centuries. And not just an ordinary myth, but an entity so terrifying that even the world government seems afraid to mention it openly. Chapter 1182 immediately pushes the story into a conflict far beyond a normal war. This time, the battle is no longer just about human strength or the God Knights. The story has begun touching something much deeper: God's belief and the collective fear of the entire world. At the same time, Elbaf turns into an increasingly unstable battlefield as strange new powers begin manifesting from imagination itself, from concepts that were never completely real to begin with. A figure like Zaza is not simply another weapon, but proof that the line between reality and manifested fear is slowly disappearing. The spoilers for Chapter 1182 are absolutely insane. So it turns out the title of this chapter really is The True God. And right from the opening pages, the atmosphere already feels incredibly tense. The story begins with the appearance of the mysterious figure IMU, who is shown holding an ancient magic book. From that book, IMU unleashes an invisible power that summons dozens of deadly weapons behind them. The weapons float in the air as if they are already prepared to execute their target without mercy. Without wasting any time, IMU launches a brutal attack called Abhimi. Every weapon shoots forward at extreme speed, relentlessly striking the giant form of Loki. The attack is impossible to fully evade, leaving Loki severely wounded and covered in blood. Cornered and beginning to realize the overwhelming gap in power, Loki struggles to stay standing while gasping for breath. He admits that there is no way he can win if the battle continues like this. The tension rises even further when Loki reveals the silhouette of his hybrid transformation, as if he is trying to unleash the last of his remaining strength. But IMU shows absolutely no fear. Instead, IMU coldly smiles and looks down on their opponent, declaring that they are about to reveal who the true god standing at the very top really is. That statement then shifts the story into a mysterious flashback. In the flashback, several figures can be seen standing in the middle of a massive flower field. The shocking part is that two of them strongly resemble the silhouettes of IMU and the figure believed to be connected to the sun god Nika. From this scene, a new name is also revealed: Romeo, a person who may hold a major role in this hidden history. Near the end of the chapter, the focus shifts back to the Straw Hat crew. Tony Chopper is seen treating Roronoa Zoro's severe injuries. While bandaging him up, Chopper jokingly scolds Zoro in a sarcastic way, mocking him for losing too early. Chopper even compares Zoro to Dracula Mihawk, and jokes that this might be the reason Zoro failed to make it into the top 30 popularity rankings. Moments like this make it feel like Eiichiro Oda intentionally left readers hanging at the perfect moment, because in the end, The legendary being known as the rain god in the world of One Piece is finally starting to be revealed. Zaza. The name itself may sound strange at first, maybe even ridiculous to some people, but there is clearly a deeper reason behind it, and that will probably be explored further later on. For additional context, these spoilers reportedly came from Worst Gen Hockey on Twitter, which is a different source than the usual Piece leaks. If you want to check the raw details later, they will likely be organized in the comment section. Back to the chapter itself. Chopper is also shown treating Gert's injuries. He even tries to reconnect Gert's severed fingers. The big question now is whether Chopper will actually succeed or fail. Honestly, this situation feels pretty complicated. On one hand, if Gert permanently loses her fingers, the consequences of IMU's attack would feel much heavier and more impactful. But on the other hand, Gert is portrayed as an active character with skills like crafting clothes, so losing her fingers would severely limit her abilities. She is also a doctor herself, which makes it even more important. Because of that, many readers are probably hoping Chopper can save her completely. Meanwhile, it turns out that Sanji and Zoro are not fully defeated yet. In this chapter, both of them get back on their feet and prepare to confront the God Knights once again. But this raises another huge question. What exactly are the God Knights trying to accomplish, and why has this battle become so important? At the same time, Summer and Killingham receive a massive power boost. Both of them become far stronger after receiving enhancement abilities from IMU known as Omenmaki. Honestly, this was somewhat predictable because earlier they did not really feel threatening enough. But once IMU stepped in and granted them the power of Blackfire, their threat level skyrocketed instantly. There is also an interesting moment where Summer is seen flying to another location. Earlier, he was in a western village alongside the elderly people and children, but then he suddenly disappeared. Later, the reason becomes clear. He went to retrieve a giant ship because the plan to kidnap the children of Elbaf is still ongoing. Since the previous ship had been destroyed, he returns carrying an entirely new one directly into the village. What makes this even crazier is the fact that Summer carries the ship on his own back. That alone proves his power has reached a completely different level. And if the ship truly belongs to the giants, then its scale must be enormous. Even the Thousand Sunny looks tiny compared to the environment of the giants, so this feat is absolutely monstrous. For Summer fans, this is definitely a hype moment, because he no longer feels like a side character. He now looks like a legitimate major threat. And it does not stop there. Killingham also unveils a terrifying new ability. He summons nightmare monsters from his strongest power, and their appearance is genuinely shocking. This suddenly connects back to an earlier conversation in Elbaf, when Gunko was once asked about his greatest fear. At that time, the answer was Sotnica. Even though there had never been a direct reaction to that figure before, everything now starts to connect together. Because Killingham has apparently manifested an entity tied to the deepest fears imaginable. Rain Goddess Zaza. The name Zaza definitely sounds unusual, maybe even strange at first, but there's actually a deeper meaning behind it. The word Zaza comes from the onomatopoeic sound often used to represent rain in several anime-style interpretations, including theories connected to One Piece itself. So if Nika symbolizes the sound Nika, which is associated with laughter and joy, then Zaza becomes the embodiment of rainfall. Both names seem to mirror each other symbolically, almost like two opposite forces. Because of that, fans have started building theories that if the story already introduced a sun god and a rain god, then the earth god and forest god could eventually appear with similar naming patterns. It would not be surprising if discussions about these remaining gods become even bigger in the next few chapters. Meanwhile, Killingham successfully manifests a being from his own imagination, Zaza, and immediately unleashes it toward the village of Elbaf. Without any difficulty at all, Zaza floods the entire area with an overwhelming storm of rainwater. This is not ordinary rain either. The scale is massive enough to instantly devastate the whole region. According to the leaked descriptions, Zaza has a tall ceremonial hat similar to the one worn by IMU. Behind her body floats a mysterious ring, also resembling Imu's appearance. That detail immediately sparked a major theory from the worst gen community. Many believe the floating ring could represent a complete awakened form, or perhaps the true peak state of certain godlike powers. Naturally, fans also started connecting this to Monkey D. Luffy. If both Imu and Zaza possess these floating rings behind their bodies, then maybe Luffy will eventually obtain a similar form once he reaches his ultimate transformation. This is where the Gear 6 theory starts gaining momentum again. Since Luffy is a Zoan-type Devil Fruit user whose full potential still feels unexplored, many readers now believe there could still be one final evolution waiting for him. Interestingly, Zaza's floating ring is different from Imu's. Instead of containing an eye symbol, hers carries the symbol of rain. The exact shape has not been fully described yet. It could resemble a giant water droplet or perhaps flowing rain patterns. But either way, the imagery sounds incredibly powerful visually. However, there's an important detail to remember. The version of Zaza appearing here is most likely incomplete because what we are seeing is merely a manifestation created through Killingham's imagination. This is very similar to the fake version of Nika that Killingham previously summoned. Even though the creature was gigantic and capable of regeneration, its strength still fell far below the original. Because of that, it is safe to assume that Zaza has not yet revealed her true power either. According to the latest information, Zaza is described as the entity most feared by the world government. And honestly, this lines up perfectly with the idea that they chose to build their civilization high above the world on the Red Line, almost as if they were trying to escape something connected to water and rain itself. That revelation makes the entire Zaza theory feel much more connected, which then leads to an even bigger question. Where's the real Zaza right now? Has this entity already reincarnated into a devil fruit? After all, devil fruits in One Piece are said to be born from humanity's desires, dreams, and beliefs. If the world government genuinely fears Zaza, then the concept of the rain god must still exist somewhere within the world. One of the characters most commonly linked to this theory is Monkey D. Dragon. Interestingly, when Dragon first appeared in the series, sound effects associated with rainfall, specifically Zaza, appeared in his panels. Fans have connected him to the rain god theory for years, and Chapter 1182 only strengthens that speculation even more. And if Dragon truly possesses the power of Zaza, then another huge question appears. Would his final form transform into a feminine rain god figure, or would it become some kind of hybrid form instead? Right now, it is still pure speculation, but the theory itself keeps becoming more convincing. After the destruction caused by Zaza, the story shifts back toward Roronoa's Zoro and Sanji as they prepare to face the God Knights once again. At this point, the characters are scattered across the same battlefield, meaning the fights could evolve in many different ways, rematches, switching opponents, or even 2 versus 2 battles. But the biggest question remains the same. Who is actually going to confront Zaza? Will Zoro and Sanji fight her directly, or will the giants step in instead? There's even a chance characters like Usopp, Nami, and Jinbe could become involved as well, especially now that the scale of the threat has become enormous. On another side of the battlefield, the fight between Loki and IMU continues escalating. Loki launches a combination of Ragnar's ice attacks and lightning strikes against IMU, but IMU responds with an enormous fireball attack that completely overwhelms the assault. Additional spoiler clarifications reveal that Zaza appears as a female figure with long hair and 4 arms. Her body is described as transparent, with the inside looking entirely filled with water. That alone makes her design feel both mysterious and terrifying. Zaza also possesses a glowing white ring behind her back, similar to Imu's, although hers lacks the eye symbol. She wears a long robe with her face hidden beneath a veil, leaving only her eyes visible. On top of that, she wears a cone-shaped hat decorated with jewelry and hanging ornaments surrounding it, giving her an almost divine yet unsettling appearance. In another update, Reddon reportedly shared a reference sketch that gives fans a clearer visual understanding of Zaza's design. At the same time, there was also an important clarification from OnKing regarding earlier leaks. Apparently, the information claiming that the world government fears the rain goddess was not entirely accurate. More specifically, it is actually the people living in the Holy Land who fear rain itself. Once again, this strengthens the theory that their decision to live above the red line is directly connected to fear of water and rainfall. With that clarification, many earlier theories suddenly make much more sense. And honestly, Chapter 1182 is packed with shocking reveals from beginning to end. Zaza's appearance alone is more than enough to dominate fan discussions throughout the upcoming break week. A lot of readers already believe this reveal is strong enough to keep the hype alive until the next chapter finally arrives. The story is clearly reaching an entirely new level now. In the middle of Elbaf's chaos, this is no longer just about the God Knights attacking or the local warriors fighting back. The conflict has entered a phase where abstract concepts themselves are becoming real powers. Zaza, who once sounded like nothing more than an ancient legend, has now appeared as a genuine threat whose impact can already be felt across the entire village. And the scariest part is that all of this was born from imagination itself, forced into reality through Killingham's power. Meanwhile, the God Knights are not standing still either. After receiving buffs from IMU, they're no longer opponents that can be underestimated like before. Their movements have become far more aggressive, more organized, and dramatically more destructive. Elbaf, which once still seemed to have a chance of survival, is now starting to look like a testing ground for overwhelming powers, a place where every faction is trying to force the world into a new set of rules created by their own will. And right in the middle of this escalation, Rorinoa Zoro and Sanji once again become central figures. They're not only expected to keep fighting, but also to understand a battlefield that has evolved into something far more chaotic than a simple duel. Because this time, they're no longer facing only physical enemies. They're confronting abstract threats, powers capable of twisting reality itself. And that is exactly what makes the conflict in this chapter feel completely different from earlier arcs. At the same time, it is obvious that Loki's role is far from over. In fact, he still stands at the very center of the conflict in Elbaf. Here, Loki is portrayed as being at his absolute lowest point in terms of strength. He has already suffered devastating injuries from IMU's attacks, bleeding heavily and barely capable of continuing the battle normally. But interestingly, Loki does not collapse completely. Instead, he forces himself back up and even reveals his final hybrid transformation. That moment feels like a clear signal that Loki still possesses one final card to play. Narratively, he is clearly losing badly in terms of raw power, which probably means Loki is no longer meant to win this fight directly, but rather to endure, buy time, or become the trigger for something far greater waiting ahead. In this chapter, Elbaf itself no longer feels like just another battle location. It is beginning to feel like the center of the world's hidden history and ancient mysteries. There are two major reasons for this. First, Elbaf has become the stage where mythology itself collides. IMU speaks about the concept of the true God, and that statement is immediately connected to a flashback involving a figure resembling the sun god Nika. This makes Elbaf feel deeply tied to the legend of Nika, the ancient history of the world, and possibly even a conflict between gods themselves. Second, Elbaf appears to be hiding an unrevealed past. The Flowerfield flashback and the introduction of the name Romeo strongly suggest that Elbaf is not simply the land of giants. It may also be the site of an important historical event, or perhaps a place connected to the truth about IMU and the ancient world itself. That is why Loki's role in this chapter is not really about victory anymore. Instead, he symbolizes the giant's resistance, a warrior continuing to fight even while completely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Elbaf as an arc is evolving beyond a standard battle storyline. It is slowly becoming an arc centered around the revelation of the world's greatest secrets. If this direction continues, then Elbaf may not only become the place where Loki falls, but also the place where the hidden truths of the ancient world finally begin to crack open. And now, with multiple godlike entities beginning to appear, the concept of the four supreme gods mentioned by IMU becomes even more important moving forward. If the rain god truly exists and its power is feared even by those connected to the world government, then this could become a massive anomaly in the final war later in the story. The biggest question is whether all of these gods will eventually stand together, or if one of them already belongs to the world government side. Honestly, that possibility sounds incredibly exciting. Chapter 1182 really feels like the beginning of something far bigger than anyone expected. At its core, this chapter is no longer just another continuation of the conflict in Elbaf. The story has officially evolved into a battle involving gods, belief, and the fears of the entire world. The appearance of Zaza as the rain goddess proves that power in One Piece is no longer limited to physical strength or haki alone. Power can now also emerge from imagination, collective belief, and fear itself. On the other side, the God Knights receiving enhancements from IMU shows that the world government is finally starting to play its biggest cards. They're no longer relying solely on military might. Instead, they're beginning to use unstable and extremely dangerous entities and abilities that could reshape the balance of the world entirely. As a result, Elbaf has transformed into a battlefield where unimaginable powers are being tested against each other. Meanwhile, Zoro and Sanji once again serve as the balancing force in the middle of all this chaos. They're not simply fighting strong enemies anymore. They're dealing with a constantly shifting situation that cannot be predicted. That makes their role absolutely crucial, because even one small mistake could completely change the direction of the battle. In the end, Chapter 1182 reinforces one major idea. The world of One Piece is moving toward a phase far greater than an ordinary war between factions. The story is entering a conflict built around ideology, fear, and godlike beings that were once treated as myths, but are now finally beginning to reveal themselves in reality. Yash, that's really interesting, Nakama. Thank you so much for sticking with the story till the end. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down in the comments section below. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.